Everybody ready? Cameras ready?
Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us here today. I'm Acting Commissioner Richard Worley. I'm joined by Mayor Brandon Scott, State's Attorney Ivan Bates, ATF Baltimore Field Special Agent in Charge Tony Crosby, ATF Baltimore Assistant Special Agent in Charge Joe Persales, FBI Baltimore Acting Assistant Special Agent in Charge Christine Fenn, members of the command staff, and some of the detectives and supervisors from the homicide unit, and along with Chief Della Rocco was supposed to be here, but she's not here. She's our chief of the crime lab. We're here today to provide an update on the Brooklyn criminal investigation. From day one, I have charged our department to leave no stone unturned and follow every piece of evidence, every tip, and every lead to ensure we complete a thorough and extensive investigation. This investigation has truly been an all-hands-on-deck approach. We've utilized multiple investigators from various units in the department, as well as leaned heavily on our local, state, and federal partners. Additionally, our crime lab has worked tirelessly to expedite the processing of all the evidence. Our detectives continue to work around the clock to follow up on investigations and bring those who committed the crimes in our city to justice. With that said, today we announced 2 additional arrests in connection with the Brooklyn Homes critical incident. 18-year-old Aaron Brown of Baltimore and a 14-year-old juvenile male of Baltimore were both served with warrants yesterday on multiple charges to include conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and multiple attempted first-degree murder charges. Brown is facing 75 charges and the juvenile male is facing 18 charges. Brown is currently in custody on unrelated charges, and members of the Warrant Apprehension Task Force, with the assistance of Baltimore School Police, took the juvenile male into custody at a local school. Even though we are announcing these 2 additional arrests, I want to be very clear this investigation is not ending anytime soon. We're continuing to work with our community, our law enforcement partners, and those standing behind me here today. We'll tirelessly follow every piece of evidence. Every tool in our tool belt will be used to identify and apprehend those responsible for this horrific and tragic incident. We continue to work at every angle to collaborate with our federal partners on NIBIN leads to link potential suspects and incidents. As I mentioned yesterday, any reports of this investigation winding down are completely untrue and simply irresponsible. I again want to extend my sincere gratitude to all the partners who joined us here today and those who are unable to attend but who wanted to for their unwavering support and collaboration and working together to make a safer Baltimore, and especially to the men and women of the BPD who tirelessly have continued to work on this case and will continue to work on the case. Multiple agency partnerships illustrate our commitment to teamwork and combining our resources to apprehend those responsible for pulling the trigger in this incident. We remain steadfast in working together to apprehend violent criminals in the city. Again, thank you to all the partners for the great work, and thank you to the Baltimore Police Department's men and women who go out every day to make the city safer. At this time, I will turn it over to Mayor Brandon Scott to say a few words.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for being here. Thank you, Commissioner. I am grateful to be here alongside our partners, the State's Attorney, ATF, and the FBI, but also, most importantly, the women and men of BPD and those detectives you see behind us who have worked tirelessly on this case. And we want to say thank you to each and every one of them. It's not lost on anyone standing here today how deeply devastating the impact of this horrific act of violence has been on dozens and dozens of people in Baltimore and Baltimore City as a whole. As has been said, this case, since the moment this incident happened, my heart is with the victims, the families, and the entire community of Brooklyn that continues to endure pain and trauma caused by this horrific mass shooting. Yesterday, while releasing our after-action reports, I talked about the way to begin to heal that trauma was to begin with accountability for everyone. Yesterday, rightfully so, we were focused on accountability of city government and anyone who showed indifference to their duties during this incident. Today, we're here to talk about accountability for the reckless individuals who decided to pick up a gun and start shooting without any regard for lives of those around them, disrupting a peaceful event that was meant to celebrate that neighborhood. I've been explicit since the very beginning that we will not rest until the Brooklyn community and the city of Baltimore gets the justice that we deserve. I've said that we will continue and are going to continue this investigation as long as it takes, and we're doing it right, so that when we identify and arrest individuals, that these charges stick. You just heard the acting commissioner walk through how extensive this portion of the investigation has been, and we are not slowing down by any means of the word. These young people that we're discussing today made the wrong choice that ended lives and changed countless forever. As a result, they will be held accountable to the full extent of the law. They won't be the last that this investigation brings to fruition. It is ongoing, and I know our detectives and their partners, like the federal partners we have standing with us today, are going to continue to act swiftly and diligently until the work is done to bring justice for Brooklyn homes. As they continue that work, we as a community are going to continue coming together to grapple with this tragedy, to support one another, and to do everything in our power to build a safer Baltimore for us all. And thank you again for being here. Thank you again to our detectives and our partners for the fine work to bringing these individuals to justice. And now I will turn it over to State's Attorney Bates.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor Scott, for that introduction. Thank you, Commissioner Worley, for the invitation to be today. I stand here today on behalf of the Office of State's Attorney for Baltimore City as an engaged partner and a willing collaborator in the fight against crime and violence in Baltimore. In the wake of the darkest day of our city as witness, we stand united against the force of violence that seek to divide us. Today's announcement is yet another testament to the renewed collaboration between law enforcement and government in Baltimore. I want to take a moment to thank our partners from the ATF and the FBI who have worked in partnership with us since the incident in July and have joined us today. Thank you for continuing to show up for Baltimore. As State's Attorney, my top priority is to hold offenders accountable to improve public safety, driven by my duty to the victims, their families, and our community. My prosecutors have worked in concert with law enforcement, our law enforcement partners. We will continue to pursue this case with the utmost diligence, ensuring that all evidence is scrutinized and every legal avenue is explored. Our message remains clear. No act of terror will be overshadowed and will not overshadow the strength and resilience of Baltimore or its residents. My thoughts and prayers remain with the families of this tragedy and the Brooklyn community. Together, we will emerge from this tragedy stronger, more compassionate, and unyielding in our pursuit for a safer tomorrow. Thank you, and I now will turn this back over to Commissioner Worley.
So we'll go ahead and take questions. Any questions should be asked over here. What I ask is that questions pertaining to this specific press release be asked first. If you have any off-topic questions, those can get asked later.
Hi, good afternoon. David Collins, WBAL-TV. It is our understanding that Aaron Brown exchanged gunfire with 3 others. Can you tell us what prompted the shooting in the first place? And I have a follow-up.
That's still under investigation now because we still have other shooters who we want to apprehend.
Brown is apparently with Jackson, who's already been arrested for shooting at 7 others. I don't know, honestly, whether or not police have recovered Jackson's weapon. Could you tell us whether or not the weapon Jackson used was Brown's? They shared it?
We aren't going to release any of that information as of yet because we're still looking at, there were multiple shooters. These aren't the only shooters that were shooting on Brooklyn Day. And we want to continue to use our federal partners to track the ballistics to each gun that we recover and hold those accountable who held that gun and pulled the trigger.
Emily Hofstetter, WYPR News. We've heard obviously that this investigation continues to be active and ongoing, and you've also been clear how complicated it is. So given the scope of this, when will you know that the investigation is over and the appropriate amount of arrests have been made?
It will be over when we find everyone who pulled the trigger that night and contributed to the 30 people being wounded. And so it may go on for a year. I can't say when that is, until every single lead is ran out to the point, because we owe that to the victims.
Hi, Ken Duffy with BAL Radio. So you have 4 in custody now, but all of them are not directly connected to the 2 murders themselves. Why is it proving so difficult to find those responsible directly for the 2 killings?
Mainly because there were multiple shooters, over 10 probably, and we have no ballistics evidence that could possibly direct us to them right this second, but that is continually being looked at, and that's why we are working with the state's attorney on which charges get applied to who, until we find out and we can confirm who shot and killed the young lady and the young man who lost their lives that day.
And just a quick follow-up, is that frustrating for you to not be able to find them at this present time?
Not at all. The work that the men, if you were, it's really hard because I see the work that the men and women in the department with our federal partners, our state partners, and our local partners do every single day. So I'm not frustrated at all. I think they've done a fabulous job with the size of the crime scene and the accomplishments they made. It's been 2 months, which is a long time, but as far as a long investigation, it isn't a long time. I know it was a mass shooting, but this is different than most of your other mass shootings around the country, where the suspect's taken into custody right away, or there's 1 or 2 suspects. We have multiple, and the men and women do a fabulous job with our partners to track the individual's progress throughout the scene.
Jeff Hager with WMAR-TV. Could you tell us whether a tip of any kind played any role in the 2 arrests, how many tips you might have received over the last 2 months, and whether any of those, if they played a role, qualified for part of the reward money?
Those are things that I honestly don't know. I know we had, in the beginning, we had a lot of tips. They've kind of slowed down a little bit. That's why we keep increasing the reward. And if any of those tips led to the apprehension and prosecution of these individuals, the tips will be paid out. We can supplement if there's more than 1 tip that needs to be paid out, but right now we haven't exactly figured that out yet.
The tips have slowed down, though.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Darcy from the Baltimore Sun. I heard you say it's probably more than 10 shooters. Is the department still trying to figure out who those people are, or do you have those people identified at this point?
We don't have them all identified. We are still trying to figure out who each and every one of them was, because obviously there's hundreds of hours of video, ballistics evidence, witness interviews to identify every single one. And we are working diligently to do that, but when we do it, we want to make sure we know exactly who they were, where they were, what direction they were shooting, and everything that we can come up with so that we can prosecute them to the fullest.
And can you say anything about what the 14-year-old is charged with? Do you think that person shot someone?
The 2 charges that I read out were what he was charged with.
Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45. Can you estimate just how many shooters you are still searching for?
We've got 4, and there were over 10, so I can tell you over 6.
Okay. The 2 suspects that have been arrested, when exactly were they arrested, and what school was the 18-year-old arrested at?
We're not going to release which school. It was a local school. The 18-year-old was already in custody for other incidents and was being held, so he was just served with the warrant. And the 14-year-old, with the assistance of school police, was arrested yesterday afternoon.
Can you give any background to what his prior offenses were, the 18-year-old? Did the 14-year-old have a record of any kind?
I can't release that either.
Okay. What part did our federal agencies play in this, and when were they brought in to assist? Was it immediately?
Yes, they were on the scene. And each federal agency plays a different role. Some help us with leads, some help us with investigations, some help us with the casings. They each play their own significant role, but everyone offered their help while we were standing on the scene. The mayor and I and CAO Leach and our detectives were getting calls from our federal partners, and they were there to help. And we've used them throughout the process. We wouldn't have been able to do this without them. That's why we are all here to show that we are working together on this.
I have a quick question, if I can, for Bates. Juvenile crime has been a real issue this year. You've commented on juvenile justice reform laws playing a part in that. What is your message to lawmakers following this, another arrest of young people committing violent crime?
I think I've been pretty clear with my message to the members of the legislature. I've had the opportunity to speak with our state senator, Bill Ferguson, also Speaker of the House, Adrian Jones. And I can say everybody is in one lockstep, and even the governor, that everybody recognizes we need to do something. One of the things that we're also looking at, and that I do know, and that has tied our hands, is also, the interrogation. What happens when we look at the Interrogation Act in reference to trying to talk to some of the juveniles? So we're at a position where we're talking to our law enforcement officers, to our law enforcement partners, where without a doubt we must do something. We'd be here all day talking about the laundry list of things that I see within the juvenile system. But the biggest thing that we must do, first and foremost right now, is we have to focus on this investigation. We have to focus on the tools that we have right now that we're allowed to use. And I will tell you this, I've been in some of the briefings, and the work that the officers have done has been absolutely amazing. I'm very happy with the work that they've done, the hours that they're putting in. And I can tell you, even though some of the laws have hampered the investigation, some of the individuals they wanted to speak to, maybe they were not able to as quickly as possible, they did not let that deter them. They were able to do the job that they needed to. And I feel very confident in looking at the cases that we have, that we will present to the jurors of Baltimore City.
Thank you.
And Mike Helgren, WJZ, and this is kind of following up on that. Whoever wants to answer, just your general reaction to a 14-year-old being arrested for attempted murder, having access to a weapon. That is so young.
Yeah, I think that, listen, and Mike, thank you for the question. I think that you've heard me say this so much that you probably know what I'm going to say. There are guns getting into the hands of people that shouldn't have them, right? On the streets of Baltimore, on the streets of cities around this country, and that's what happens when we refuse to actually put things into place, not just here at the state level, not just here locally, but nationally, to actually deal with a problem that has taken lives in Baltimore, in city after city after city after city after city with these mass shootings, right? This young man ruined his life by making this decision. When I was his age and we had a conflict, that would end up in a fist fight. But a fist fight is not going to end or ruin your life. We shouldn't be talking about a 14-year-old being involved in a mass shooting because they had a handgun and they don't know how to resolve their conflicts. But it talks to us about all the things that we know that we have to fix in our society. What is happening that young people grow up into that age and think that the best way for them to resolve their conflict is to pull a gun? Where do they get that from? What adult actually helped them acquire that weapon? Where did that weapon come from? Every single part of that matters, and that's why you're going to continuously hear me talk about what needs to happen for gun violence reduction in this complexity of that, but at every single level of government and every single level of this country.
And just one other question. You may have said this, so I apologize. Is that 14-year-old being charged as an adult? Is that yet to be determined at this point?
At this moment in time, we're still looking at everything. I think it's best that we, in terms of us law enforcement, I want to look at all the facts a little bit more in depth in terms of the additional charges, if there are going to be any, but we will make that decision. And for me and for us, when we take it to the grand jury, that's when we will officially decide what charges they'll have. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We will be sending out a press release in about 15, 20 minutes.
Shady side. You too good.